I've always been interested in having bees, but I really got excited about it when we did a charity dinner at Vinnie's, and I did a tasting menu using different types of honey. And I remember we had a charity auction that night. One of the prizes was a beehive, a bee suit, a smoker. I was the auctioneer. I remember during the night thinking, oh goodness me, I wonder if I could bid for this at the same time as calling the auction. It didn't happen, but I missed out on the prize, and I went home that night thinking, I've got to get some bees at home or at work at the restaurant. So that's where sort of it really all started. And then about 6 months later, we had another occasion to use some honey from an urban beekeeper, a hobbyist, and he asked me would I be interested in serving his honey as part of the dessert for a private function. And I said, look, I'd love to. We love working with honey. And so from that, I said to him, tell me a little bit about your bees. And so we got chatting, and that was it. It was like the flood had started. I was just fascinated in what he was doing with his bees at home. And so I went round and visited his hives, and then we got chatting, and I actually bought a hive off him. In fact, anybody can keep bees in the city, in an urban environment, but there are a couple of things you need to consider. Obviously, the space they're going to require. Now, mine are located just behind the house. There's just that small little alleyway between the fence and the house, and the reason we chose that space was we didn't want to have the bees in the garden where the children play. And so we sort of thought about it and did some reading up on it, and there's enough space for the bees to come in and out. There's enough space for me to access the hives. You don't need a massive place to keep your bees. You do need to consider your site of the hives quite carefully. So the most important thing is do get your neighbours' permission, get them involved, get them on your side, and talk to them first before you even consider installing a hive. I think it's really important.
I am the bee lady. I do in-school bee education. I visit schools all around Auckland, and I teach the children about bees, what they do, why they're important, and why we need them. I became the bee lady by default because that's what people would call me, so I just stuck with it. I would collect swarms around the city, and it was while I was collecting swarms, I noticed that there was quite a lack of education about bees, and people didn't understand what they were doing or why they were there, and mostly there was a lot of fear. And so I was inspired to educate people a bit more. And so with my observational beehive and my daughter at kindy at the time, I went to her kindergarten and talked to them about bees, and then from there I did more schools and more early childhood centres, and it just grew from there, and I became the bee lady. The kids love it. When I reveal the bees in the observation hive, they're always fascinated by it, and you always get the holy, whoa, ah! They love it. And I talk to them about bees, and most kids have the bees will sting you. That's the only thing they know about bees. And by the end of my visit, most of them will have a really good understanding. They know how to behave around bees and why we need them and why we need to take care of them. The biggest misconception is bees are scary. Again, they will sting you. You'll be chased by a swarm of bees. And it really comes down to lack of education. Bees are not scary. Yes, bees do sting. That's how they defend themselves, but they only do it if they're scared or angry. And what frightens bees is sudden movement. And so, of course, bee comes near you, people go, there's a bee, and that's what frightens them. You just got to stand still and, leave the bees alone, and they'll leave you alone. That's what I grew up with, and that's pretty much the basic rule. If you leave them alone, they'll leave you alone.